Let's bring in David Smith now, The Guardian's Washington bureau chief. David, thank you so much for joining us. Trump has been talking to US media. What details from this operation and the US intentions have we learned so far?
Yeah, Donald Trump gave a brief interview to the New York Times in which he described this as a brilliant operation and paid tribute to the US troops who took part and executed this. I mean, I think from the White House point of view, they regard this as having gone as well as it could have done. No reports of US military loss of life, and Maduro and his wife in custody facing charges going back to that 2020 indictment on drug trafficking and corruption against Nicolas Maduro. But still, many unanswered questions about the planning of this operation, potential casualties on the Venezuelan side, certainly complaints from the US Congress over lack of consultation with them, and obviously huge concerns in the international community about whether any of this is in accordance with international law. We are seeing arguments, not quite yet from Donald Trump himself, but certainly Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, that really frame this as a law enforcement operation and suggest that in their view, Nicolas Maduro was never the legitimate leader of Venezuela. His government was never legitimate, and therefore they feel justified in taking this action. But I think still we await many further details, including what is the potential future of Venezuela, and does the US intend to play a role in that when we hear from Donald Trump at his press conference at Mar-a-Lago in a few hours' time.
David, how much were we expecting something of this scale?
It's one of those funny things. I mean, for a start, of course, Trump constantly surprises us and knocks us back on our heels. We're only like the first few days of 2026, and here we are again with huge drama and surprise involving Trump. And when it actually happened, it was breathtaking and hugely dramatic and shakes the world order. And yet, on another level, it's actually not that surprising at all, because the signs have been there for months. Since August, the US has had this big military buildup in the region, a huge naval fleet. And of course, we've seen those military strikes on alleged drug trafficking boats, resulting in more than 100 deaths so far. And those are also hugely controversial. We've seen oil tankers seized by the US government, and a broadening pressure campaign for the overthrow of Nicolas Maduro. So I think military experts and others saw the signs and did expect some kind of operation like this. But then the big surprise was that so quickly Nicolas Maduro and his wife, we learned, were in custody, were flown out of the country, were in the US, and that was that I think will take many people by surprise, and certainly unsurprisingly is attracting criticism from the Venezuelan government, who are demanding proof of life and further details on Maduro's whereabouts right now.
We heard from Maduro just a few days ago when he adopted a much more conciliatory tone towards the US. Let's just take a listen.
The US government knows, because we've told many of their spokespeople, that if they want to seriously discuss an agreement to combat drug trafficking, we're ready. If they want oil, Venezuela's ready for US investment, like with Chevron, whenever they want it, wherever they want it, and however they want it.
Now, we know negotiations had been taking place since the start of the Trump administration. There are reports that Maduro was offered ways out. What do we know about where things stood in that negotiation process?
Not a great deal, and it's possible what you heard from Maduro there was too little, too late. But certainly there are reports that his departure was relatively simple and straightforward, in that that had been negotiated. Perhaps the US had made clear to him it was inevitable and better to go quietly. You heard him there refer to oil, and many observers, certainly many critics of the US, regard that as an important motivation for Trump's action here. But I certainly hope questions will be asked of Trump at his press conference about where those negotiations were at. I mean, we had heard from Trump in Washington in recent weeks some threats to Maduro. He used some swear words at one point about what would happen if Maduro messed with America, and there was basically a series of warnings and threats, and now Trump has followed through. And I think there'll be some Trump supporters delighted about this the show of American strength. And the argument will be made that past US presidents had also threatened Maduro and done nothing, and Trump is the one who's actually executed here and taken action.
Trump has also been known to criticize interventionist policies. Is this quite a shift from the kind of president that he set out to be?
Yeah, I think his critics, including in Trump's own support base, the Make America Great Again movement, will say so. They believed for the past decade that Trump was all about the idea of America first and steering clear of foreign entanglements. A lot of that ideology really forged in the crucible of the Iraq War, and a backlash against that, which Trump himself has criticized. There are some critics who say there are unnerving parallels between Iraq and Venezuela, including that oil motivation. However, overall, I think Trump will probably get away with this again, because the crucial dividing line is the concept of numerous American troops on the ground, and when they start taking casualties and when body bags come home. I think that would be a bridge too far for many of Trump's supporters. But from everything we know from the past 24 hours, it appears that, again, that is not the case. Apparently, it seems no US casualties. And so I think Trump will probably win this round. And the same applies to some of his other foreign interventions. There's been aerial bombardments from the sky, but again, not many US troops involved. All of that said, there'll be some members of Congress raising concerns about this, and yes, saying Trump is now too expansionist, too interfering in other countries, and actually the majority of Trump voters, they would much prefer him to be focused on domestic issues such as the cost of living, affordability, bringing prices down.
David, stay with us. We're just going to take a quick break and have a look at some pictures coming to us from Caracas that give us a sense of the mood there on the ground. Quite a quiet mood. Lots of people gathered in the streets. Let's just take a listen. This is a pro-Maduro gathering. Now, David, coming back to what we were just talking about, who from Trump's administration had been pushing for this? Has US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, for example, been playing quite a big part?
Yes, I think Rubio is the first name that comes to mind. He's of Cuban descent, and we may see in the coming days and weeks that the fate of Venezuela is tied to the fate of Cuba. And yeah, Rubio is an interesting figure. On one level, he is seen as perhaps one of the more traditional Republicans, perhaps more conventional in terms of foreign policy, especially on an issue such as the war in Ukraine, where he's arguably the most pro-Ukraine person there. But regarding Maduro in Venezuela, he's certainly a hawk, and I think he's been pushing for this outcome for some time. He will be very happy with the way things have gone. He's a big influence on Trump, I think, on this kind of issue. And we've already seen Rubio responding to these events on social media, making the argument that Maduro was never actually the legitimate president of Venezuela. The government was never legitimate in his view. Therefore, this action is justified. It's a law enforcement operation because Maduro is facing those charges from 2020. I think, in the Trump cabinet, you also have Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, not known for deep ideology on any of these issues beyond cheerleading for Trump and backing what he does. And certainly what we've seen from Hegseth in the past year is relishing spectacle and displays of military might. Let's remember his job title has changed from Defense Secretary to Secretary of War, and he now runs the War Department. And when you look at those images, that's becoming literal. Pam Bodnar, the Attorney General, is also involved, of course. She's expressed gratitude for what's happened in terms of enforcing the law here. I think you'll see Trump's cabinet really rallying around this and celebrating it as another example of the strength of Donald Trump's leadership, as they often like to say at those cabinet meetings. And within Congress, some Republicans are already expressing similar sentiments. Others will have reservations, and certainly from the Democratic Party, we're hearing a lot of criticism already for various reasons, including just the way how this evokes ghosts from America's foreign policy past, especially in Latin America.
David, do stay with us. For more on this story, we're also going to bring in Venezuelan journalist Noris Argotte Soto. Thank you so much for joining us from Caracas. First of all, I hope that you're safe there. Before I ask you anything, let's just take a listen to the Vice President of Venezuela.
In the face of this brutal situation and in the face of this brutal attack, we have no knowledge of the whereabouts of President Nicolas Maduro and First Lady Cilia Flores. We demand from the Donald Trump government immediate proof of life for President Maduro and the First Lady. We demand the respect to our international rights. We condemn this brutal way, savage aggression against our country that has taken the lives of military officials who will now become martyrs of our country and that have taken the lives of innocent civilian Venezuelans in all the different attack locations, such as the capital, the Araguara state, the Miranda state, and the Guaira state.
Now, Noris, if Maduro has been captured, who's running the country right now?
These in other interventions, if this was a normal situation, if we play by the Constitution, the one who be taking the power should be Delcy Rodriguez, since she is the vice president of the country. And if she is unwilling or unable to do so, the one who would have to take power should be the president of the National Assembly of the Congress, which is his brother, Jorge Rodriguez. But since it's not a normal situation, we are not sure or not clear who is going to take the power right now. If we play by the rules of democracy, of course, the one who would be taking power should be Edmundo González, which allegedly won the elections in 2024. But let's remember that they both are abroad. They are not in the country. González is in Spain, and we're not sure of the whereabouts of Maria Corina Machado. So that's out of the question, at least for now. So this is a very confusing situation, not only for the international community, but as well for the Venezuelans.
It's past 9 a.m. now in the capital. Can you tell us about the latest that's going on in Caracas right now? We saw some people in the streets there, pro-Maduro, gathering, other people gathering. What's the mood where you are?
Yes, where we are, or where I am, the people are mostly going out on the street, but to buy groceries, to buy medicines, and to put gasoline into their cars. I think people are very much afraid of what's going to happen, and they're trying to purchase as much as they can to face this situation. Of course, we've seen this gathering as well from the Chavismo. Let's remember that even though that there's a huge discontent with this administration, of course, they still have a political base. was only normal. And we said that it was likely that the remaining officials near to Nicolas Maduro were going to call on the people and maybe to call on the militia, which basically are little trained civilian people that they've have been recruiting in the past years. But of course, we need to see how everything is going to unfold in the coming hours. I don't see protest or disruptions in that kind of way further than this manifestation from pro Maduro bases and people trying to buy as much as they can.
How is the US's operation being received by Venezuelans? I know it might be too early still, but is there any sign of kind of celebration or on the contrary anger towards this military intervention, or does it completely depend on who you're speaking to?
No. There's a mix of emotions. Of course, like I said, there are still people who are very pro Maduro, despite everything and amid everything. But the general reaction was shocked. People was very shocked. Like we never expected this would happen or in this way. It looks more like a movie, like a TV show that we see in streaming platforms. It doesn't seem like a real situation. At the first moment, people didn't believe in the news. So I had a lot of people calling me, because I'm a journalist and I'm one of the few that are still here who speak English and that can translate where the international media was saying. But yes, it was shocking. It was mostly surprise, shocked, and fear.
And we really appreciate you keeping us informed on what's happening. Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello has called for calm. Let's take a listen to him.
We are here in the capital city, Caracas, after assessing the damage caused by this criminal attack, this terrorist attack against our people, our homeland, our electrical facilities, against the Bolivarian Revolution, and against those who have nothing to do with the Bolivarian Revolution.
Y contra aquellos que inclusive no tienen nada que ver con la Revolución Bolivariana.
It is an attack against Venezuela, against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. The military forces, the police forces, here with me is a group of them, the people ready for any situation, ready for any event that threatens the peace of our country.
Noris, what's the head of the army in Venezuela saying at this stage? Are there any hints of what could come next?
Well, aside from what we've seen in the early morning and in the middle of the night, there hasn't been any new developments. There are a lot of rumors even that Delcy Rodriguez is not in the country, that she fled to Russia, but those are complete rumors. We will have to wait to see if one of them appears in this manifestation, in this gathering that we are seeing right now on screen. We are waiting even for Trump to give or to deliver his press conference in a few hours to see what are going to be the next steps. Who is the U.S. going to support to make a transition in Venezuela? Because what we're waiting is a transition, and we don't know who is going to be capable to lead this transition.
Noris Argotte Soto, thank you so much for your insights. I want to bring back in David Smith now, just for one final question. Is there any hint from the US side on what could come next? Has the administration been working with the leader of the opposition, Maria Corina Machado, on a post-Maduro?
No, very little. I would not at all be surprised if in his press conference, Trump, maybe even sort of off the cuff and improvisationally, says Machado would make a great leader and hopes that will happen. But hard to know right now what role the US intends to play, if any. And we may well, I think, see the America First ideology of Donald Trump become something that's an ideology of convenience, in that he was happy to take this action now and extract Maduro. But the America First instincts might now kick in again, and you may hear rhetoric along the lines of, it's not our problem anymore. It's better if the Venezuelan people sort this out themselves, and further US interference could be counterproductive. And so, hard to know right now. I think certainly rhetorically there will be support for the opposition, for human rights activists on the ground. Marco Rubio may amplify some of that, but I think based on what we've seen from Trump in other arenas around the world so far, I suspect his focus now will be on Maduro, on that criminal case, on taking a victory lap for this operation, and moving on to the next battlefield.
David Smith, thank you so much for your insights. That's David Smith, Washington Bureau Chief for The Guardian.